Hey, what's up everyone? Today we're counting down the 20 best Nintendo Switch and Switch 2 games. Games so good they hit that perfect 10. No filler, no fluff, just the real ones. Let's get into it. Fire Emblem Three Houses is a tactical RPG where you play as a professor at a military academy on a continent called Fodlan. You pick one of three houses, each led by a different noble student, and that choice shapes everything. The story, the battles, the alliances, and even who ends up as your enemy. The combat is turn-based strategy on grid maps, and you're always managing positioning, weapon types, and skill matchups. Outside of battle, you walk around the monastery, build bonds with students, share meals, and run training sessions that directly affect how your units grow. The deeper you get, the more you realize each house has its own version of the truth, and none of them are entirely right. It's the kind of game where you finish one route and immediately start a second just to see what you missed. Super Mario Galaxy plus Super Mario Galaxy 2. These two games put Mario in space and completely reinvent how 3D platforming feels. You're running across tiny planets, each with their own gravity, so the ground curves beneath your feet and you can walk completely upside down without it ever feeling wrong. Galaxy 1 builds the foundation you collect power stars across themed galaxies, while unraveling a story about Bowser, Princess Peach, and a mysterious girl named Rosalina, whose backstory hits harder than you'd expect from a Mario game. Galaxy 2 strips back the hub world and just throws one brilliant level idea after another at you. Both games use motion controls for spin attacks and to collect star bits, but it never feels gimmicky. The level design is creative in ways that still feel fresh. Ice planets, lava worlds, gravity-flipping chambers, and boss fights that use the spherical environments in clever ways. The Legend of Zelda: Tears of the Kingdom is the follow-up to Breath of the Wild, and it takes the same open Hyrule and layers an entirely new set of mysteries on top of it. Link gains new abilities. One lets you fuse objects together to make weapons or vehicles. Another lets you reverse the movement of objects through time. And one lets you pass through ceilings to reach higher ground. The Sky Islands and underground depths add two massive new layers to the world that feel completely distinct from the surface. The story involves a creeping darkness spreading across the land, ancient ruins falling from the sky, and a threat tied to Hyrule's distant past. What makes the experience stand out is how the game constantly rewards curiosity. You can build rafts, catapults, flying machines, or just strap rockets to a shield and see what happens. Dragon Quest I and II HD 2D Remake. This remake takes the two foundational Dragon Quest games, classics from the 80s, that helps define the JRPG genre, and rebuilds them in the gorgeous HD 2D visual style. Pixel art characters on richly lit 3D environments with a painterly, almost cinematic look. Dragon Quest I is a focused solo adventure where you play as a descendant of a legendary hero, tasked with finding a kidnapped princess and defeating a Dark Lord. It's short and direct, but the world has a quiet charm. Dragon Quest II expands everything a party of three, a wider world, multiple continents, and a more complex villain. Both games keep their turn-based combat intact, keeping the pacing tight and strategic without overcomplicating things. The remakes add quality-of-life improvements, rearranged music, and fully voiced cutscenes that give both stories more weight than the originals could. Final Fantasy Tactics: The Ivalice Chronicles is a tactical RPG set in the medieval kingdom called Ivalice, where a war over succession is tearing the country apart. You follow Ramza Beulf, a young noble who gets pulled into a conflict far more corrupt and dangerous than he was prepared for. Battles take place on isometric grid maps where height, positioning, and class abilities determine everything. The job system lets you mix and match abilities across dozens of classes. You might have a knight using black magic, or a monk with time abilities. And building your team is genuinely deep. The story deals with political betrayal, religious manipulation, and class inequality in ways that feel sharp and real. It doesn't spell everything out, and the original translation was notoriously dense, but this version cleans up the script and makes the narrative far more accessible.
I can't go on.
Hades 2 is a roguelike, where you play as Melanoe, daughter of Hades, fighting her way through the Greek underworld to confront the titan Kronos. Like the first game, every run starts from the same point, and ends in either victory or death. And death just sends you back to try again, with a slightly stronger build. The combat is fast and satisfying, built around a weapon you choose at the start of each run, and a set of boons from Olympian gods that layer on top of each other in unexpected ways. Where this sequel goes deeper is in the world. There are now 2 directions to explore, more gods to meet, a wider cast of characters, and a story that unfolds across dozens of runs through dialogue, cutscenes, and gradual reveals. The writing is sharp, the characters feel genuine, and the progression never stops feeling meaningful. Mario Kart World is the biggest the series has ever been. The track roster is massive, pulling together new courses alongside legacy fan favorites, all redesigned with more vertical sections, shortcuts, and dynamic hazards than previous entries. The handling feels tighter than Mario Kart 8, with better drift mechanics and a new boost system that rewards chaining moves together. The item balance has been adjusted to feel more competitive. Getting hit at the front of the pack still stings, but it doesn't feel as punishing. Online play is smoother, and the new open-world exploration mode lets you drive freely between courses, which adds a layer of discovery that's genuinely fun. Local multiplayer still holds up as one of the best couch gaming experiences around. It's the kind of game where you drop in for one race, and suddenly, it's been 2 hours. Final Fantasy VII Remake Intergrade takes the opening section of the original 1997 game, a few hours of content, and expands it into a full 40-hour action RPG. You play as Cloud Strife, a mercenary hired by a rebel group called Avalanche to blow up reactors draining the planet's life energy in the city of Midgar. The combat mixes real-time action with a tactical pause system where you spend an ability meter on spells, skills, and items. It keeps fights dynamic, but never chaotic. The story sticks close to the original while adding new layers that hint at bigger things coming. Midgar, which was always a brief opening in the original, is here a fully realized world, full of side quests, characters, and moments that make you care about people who barely had lines before. The Intergrade version adds an extra chapter following Yuffie that's as good as anything in the main game. Metroid Prime Remastered drops you on an alien planet called Talon 4 as bounty hunter Samus Aran, and it almost never tells you what to do. You explore first-person through interconnected environments, ancient ruins, volcanic caverns, underwater research facilities, scanning everything to piece together the story from logs, enemy data, and environmental details. The combat is deliberate. Different enemies require specific visors or weapons, and new abilities you find let you access areas that were previously blocked. The remaster is technically impressive. The original 2002 game has been rebuilt with modern lighting and geometry, and it holds up completely. The atmosphere is thick throughout, isolated, tense, and deeply curious. It rewards players who stop and look at everything, and punishes players who rush. The boss fights feel earned, each one requiring you to use something you've recently learned. Donkey Kong Bananza is a 3D platformer built entirely around destruction. Almost every surface in the game can be punched apart. Terrain, walls, floors, structures, and that's not just a visual trick. It's the core mechanic. DK can dig through entire mountainsides, collapse platforms, and reshape the environment in real time to create paths or uncover secrets. The levels are layered underground worlds, with different material types that react differently to impact. Rock crumbles, metal dents, wood splinters. Paired alongside a young character named Pauline, who provides abilities of her own, the gameplay loop shifts between brute force exploration and more clever puzzle solving as the game progresses. The story keeps things light. There's a villain, a mystery, and a journey, but the real hook is always the physicality of it.
And most things you can get your hands on with incredible force. Destruction can lead to discoveries, so set off a chain reaction and see what happens.
Cyberpunk 2077 on Switch 2 is the full game with all updates and the Phantom Liberty expansion, a technical achievement that would have seemed impossible on Nintendo hardware a few years ago. You play as V, a mercenary in the neon-lit megacity, Night City, and the story kicks off when a job goes wrong and you end up sharing headspace with the digital ghost of a dead rock star named Johnny Silverhand. The open world is enormous and genuinely vertical. Skyscrapers, underground markets, corporate towers, and the density of detail in every district makes exploration feel endlessly rewarding. The RPG systems are deep. You customize your build through stats, cyberware implants, and skill trees, and different builds open up different ways to handle quests. The writing is strong, especially in Phantom Liberty, where a spy thriller story adds some of the best missions in the entire game. Planet of Lana II is a cinematic puzzle platformer that picks up after the events of the first game, continuing the story of Lana and her companion Mui across a planet caught between two colliding civilizations. The game is visually stunning. Every scene is hand-painted, layered with parallax backgrounds and lighting effects that make it look like a moving painting. The puzzles use the bond between Lana and Mui. You switch between them, use their individual abilities to interact with the environment, and solve challenges that require timing, positioning, and trust. The pacing is deliberate, leaning into atmosphere and quiet exploration as much as action. The story builds on the first game's themes of connection and survival, and goes to places emotionally that feel earned rather than manipulative. There's minimal text and no hand-holding. Most of the narrative is told through visuals, sound design, and the behavior of the world itself. Mario Kart 8 Deluxe is still one of the best games on Nintendo Switch, period. The Booster Course Pass doubled the track count to 96 courses, pulling in tracks from across the entire Mario Kart history and remastering them with updated visuals. The base mechanics are tight. Drifting, item management, and track memorization all reward skill without making it inaccessible for casual players. The anti-gravity sections introduced in MK8 add interesting layout possibilities that the tracks make great use of. Battle Mode, which was stripped back in the Wii U original, was fully restored here, with dedicated arenas and modes. It runs at a locked 60 frames per second, handles incredibly well in handheld mode, and local multiplayer with up to 4 players on one screen remains one of gaming's great simple pleasures. Even after years on the market, the track variety and polish make it impossible to put down. Kirby and the Forgotten Land is Kirby's first full 3D platformer, and it handles the transition with total confidence. You explore a post-apocalyptic world overgrown with nature, shopping malls, stadiums, highways, all reclaimed by wildlife and mystery. Kirby's classic copy abilities return, but the new Mouthful mode lets him inhale real-world objects whole. Cars, vending machines, traffic cones, stairs. These transformations are used cleverly throughout the levels as both movement tools and puzzle mechanics. The game has a gentle difficulty curve that makes it approachable for younger players, but the true final challenges are genuinely tough. Each stage has hidden collectibles tied to a rescue mission, and finding them requires attention and creativity. The story is light on its feet, but builds to something surprisingly moving. Breath of the Wild changed what people expected from open-world games. You wake up as Link with no memory and step into a version of Hyrule that has been devastated by a disaster a century prior. The world is yours to explore from almost the first minute you can see a mountain in the distance, and just go there. Physics and chemistry underpin everything. Fire spreads, metal conducts electricity, ice floats, wet enemies take more lightning damage. The 4 main divine beasts are optional in any order, and the 120 shrines scattered across the world offer bite-sized physics puzzles with consistent internal logic. The story is told in reverse, through memories hidden across the map, which makes piecing it together feel personal. The game trusts you completely. It gives you tools, drops you in the world, and lets you figure everything out. Hollow Knight Silksong follows Hornet, the quick, needle-wielding warrior from the first game, as she wakes in a strange, ancient kingdom and fights her way to its peak. The movement immediately feels different from the original. Faster, more aerial, built around a silk-based traversal system that makes exploration feel fluid in a new way. The world is enormous and interconnected in the classic Metroidvania style. You'll open paths between areas, find shortcuts, and slowly understand the geography through play rather than a map marker. The combat is precise and demanding. Enemies have readable patterns, but the game gives you little room for error. The lore is told through item descriptions, NPC dialogue, and environmental storytelling, and it builds a world that feels ancient and layered without explaining itself up front. Resident Evil Requiem takes the over-the-shoulder survival horror framework of RE4 and RE Village and pushes it into new territory. The setting is a dense, sprawling European coastal city that has fallen to a new strain of bioweapon, and the atmosphere is relentlessly oppressive, dark, rain-soaked, full of sounds that make you hesitant to open the next door. Resource management is tighter than recent entries, and the enemy behavior is more adaptive, meaning strategies that worked early in the game stop being reliable as it progresses. The story introduces a new protagonist while connecting to earlier threads in the series, and the pacing between action sequences and quieter investigation sections is well balanced. Boss fights are inventive and use the environment in ways that feel satisfying rather than scripted. Pokémon Pokopia is the most ambitious mainline Pokémon game the series has ever produced. The world is a single, massive continent with seamlessly connected regions, no loading screens between areas, no strict route structure, and it's populated with wild Pokémon that behave differently depending on time of day, weather, and territory. The new battle system runs in real time, with an optional turn-based layer, giving you flexibility in how you engage. Team building has more depth than previous entries, with abilities and held items interacting in more complex ways. The story follows multiple rival characters whose arcs run parallel to yours, and the writing is sharper and more confident than anything the series has attempted before. Exploration rewards players who pay attention. Rare spawns, hidden areas, and late-game revelations all live off the beaten path. Xenoblade Chronicles 3 follows 6 soldiers from 2 opposing nations who discover that the war they've been fighting is built on a lie. The world, called Ionios, is a fusion of 2 colliding worlds frozen mid-collision, and exploring it is one of the great pleasures of the game. Every region has its own ecology, culture, and secrets. The real-time combat system is deep. Each character has a class with unique abilities, and switching classes between characters lets you build synergies across your full party of 6. The story is serious and emotionally direct, dealing with mortality, purpose, and the cost of systems built on human sacrifice. It doesn't shy away from those themes, and the payoffs hit harder because of it. Side quests here aren't filler. Many of them build out the world's history and character relationships in ways that recontextualize the main story.
Come here! I got something for you! You're a lifesaver!
Super Mario Odyssey is the most joyful game on the Switch. Mario travels across wildly different kingdoms, a city of humans, a food-themed world, a Metro-inspired urban landscape, chasing Bowser across a globe-trotting adventure. The hook is Cappy, a sentient hat Mario throws to possess enemies, objects, and creatures, turning them into playable characters with their own movement and abilities. Capturing a T-Rex and stomping through a level, or becoming a Goomba stack, or turning into a bolt of electricity to travel through wires, the variety never slows down. Movement itself is the core mechanic. The range of things Mario can physically do is enormous, and skilled players spend hundreds of hours finding tricks and optimizing paths just for the pleasure of the movement. Power moons are scattered generously across every kingdom, and finding them rewards curiosity without making them feel meaningless. That's every game on the list, 20 absolute bangers across Switch and Switch 2. Drop your personal top 5 in the comments, and if I missed one, I want to hear it. Subscribe, and I'll see you in the next one.